Good morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, the Geneva summit. President Joe Biden heads there today to face Russian President Vladimir Putin in their first big meeting taking place tomorrow. Biden says he wants to work together. However,
I'm not looking for conflict with Russia, but that we will respond if Russia continues its harmful activities.
this comes as NATO issued a joint statement calling Russia's actions in the region a threat to Euro-Atlantic security. What you need to know before the two world leaders square off. California dream come true. The Golden State is finally fully reopening today. Capacity limits and social distancing guidelines are being lifted. Coronavirus cases are dropping, but new concerns over the Delta variant are rising. Is the state ready to go back to normal? Help wanted. Businesses are reopening and they need workers. The country is seeing an unprecedented number of open jobs and can't fill them. How teens looking for summer jobs might be more valuable to employers than ever. And the open road. RVs are flying off car lots as Americans look to escape to the great outdoors. 56 million people are planning to take an RV vacation. That's more than double the summer average. What you need to know before taking your big trip. I just can't wait for any trip.
Any trip.
That's not work related.
RV sounds fun.
Yeah.
In theory, I'd have to do it.
I know, especially with them flying off. I feel like all of a sudden we're going to see people doing the moving van thing or something like that. Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll get to that a little bit later. But President Biden is set to meet with a final round of key U.S. allies today ahead of his highly anticipated meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The
president will meet with the leaders of the European Commission in Brussels before heading to Geneva later today. And that is where we find NBC News correspondent Monica Alba in Geneva. So, Monica, first of all, President Biden worked to send a strong message to U.S. adversaries during the NATO summit yesterday. How did he try to rally NATO support?
Absolutely, Joe. He was very clear on where he stood in these meetings yesterday. This was the largest convening of all of the world leaders we've seen so far of the summits. Of course, we had the G7, NATO yesterday, and today the meetings with the EU. And the president mentioned that in all of his conversations with these people on the world stage, he talked to them about his upcoming meeting with President Putin. And he was very clear about confronting threats from China and from Russia. Take a listen to how he framed it in his press conference yesterday.
This is going to be looked at 25 years from now as whether or not we stepped up to the challenge, because there's a lot of autocracies that are counting on them being able to move more rapidly and successfully in an ever complicated world than democracies can. We all concluded we're going to prove them wrong.
That is the main theme of this week-long trip, his first, of course, as president. And what's so notable here, Joe, as well, is that this is really what the president has been touting. He wants to rally the world's democracies against the autocracies. And he has been clear-eyed on how he plans to deliver that message personally to President Putin when he arrives here for that high-stakes face-to-face summit that will take place over the course of many hours tomorrow when the two leaders meet.
Yeah, and Monica, President Biden actually issued another warning to President Putin. What did he have to say?
It's so interesting. He was actually able to assess how he saw President Putin, calling him a worthy adversary, saying he was smart and savvy. The two last meeting about a decade ago when Joe Biden was vice president and Vladimir Putin was prime minister at the time. They had a very notable exchange where reportedly Joe Biden said he looked at him and didn't see a soul, to which Putin replied, "We understand one another," though we should point out that Putin just most recently in that interview with Keir Simmons said he didn't actually remember the exchange that way. But the president saying that he will absolutely confront Putin on several issues in terms of cybersecurity and ransomware attacks, but that he's also not necessarily looking for conflict with Russia. Take a listen.
I'm going to make clear to President Putin that there are areas where we can cooperate if he chooses. And if he chooses not to cooperate and acts in a way that he has in the past relative to cybersecurity and some other activities, then we will respond. We will respond in kind.
The agenda for their talks is very long, Joe, but here's one thing we do know. They don't plan to hold a joint press conference after that wraps up. Instead, President Biden will hold his own solo presser, and it's possible that President Putin will do the same. So you're not going to see a repeat image of what happened in Helsinki with former President Trump. And that, the White House says, is by design. They want to be sure that President Biden can give his own readout of what he raised in those discussions without there being a competition. And again, without elevating President Putin to the world stage in such a manner as we saw former president do those years ago, though many experts say just by having this summit, President Putin is getting a lot of what he wants out of it, which is this recognition of meeting with an American president, of course.
So, Monica, before the Putin summit, President Biden is meeting with the EU Commission presidents today. They are allies, but one key issue, tensions between the U.S. and the EU over Trump-era import taxes. How might they address that today?
It's possible they will reach a resolution on this today, Joe. We're told that in terms of some of the draft language that we may see come out of this, there are references to trying to reach an agreement on that. So that's one potential area of cooperation. But there's also something we expect, a major trade announcement, which is potentially between Boeing and Airbus, something that the United States has worked closely with the EU to do. We understand that may come in the next couple of hours, and that would be a major breakthrough as well as another example of part of the trade war that took place during the Trump administration. You can expect them to address all of that in the next afternoon or so. Joe.
And we know you'll keep an eye on all of it. Monica Alba in Geneva. Monica, thanks so much.
Let's bring in NBC News contributor Danielle Pletka. She's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Danielle, good morning. Now, President Biden's praise for NATO stands in sharp contrast with President Trump. How is President Biden's America is back message being received on the world stage?
Look, Joe Biden has a huge advantage on the world stage because he is not Donald Trump. And that was step one for him. But the challenge, I think, for him is that he needs to actually achieve something more than joy at his not being his predecessor, more than happiness that the United States is, quote unquote, back.
And now, what are the stakes of this meeting with President Putin if we look ahead to tomorrow? I mean, I think we know that they're pretty high. I don't know how much we're expecting to come out of it, but just kind of put it in context for us.
I think the stakes are extraordinarily high. And frankly, a lot of us in Washington were surprised that the president was willing to sit down with Vladimir Putin quite so soon after the president very boldly called him a killer. I think that what we need to see, again, is concrete steps. We need to see not just a rollback of the cyber attacks that the president mentioned. We need to see a rollback of the interference in places like Ukraine and Donbass, a rollback of Russian forces in places like Crimea. We need to see that the Russians are actually behaving according to global norms rather than bucking those norms by arresting and poisoning Putin's adversaries.
And Danielle, quickly, let's talk China. The NATO summit also focused on relations with China. What can President Biden do to continue diplomacy efforts there?
What we really need to see again is, yes, a precursor to all of this has to be agreement on the global stage that we need to do something about China. But agreement is nothing. What we really need is for countries to do something. The fact that they couldn't even agree to condemn slave labor in China, I think, is a sign of just how much real disagreement this meeting covered up.
All right, Danielle, thank you so much.
Today, the Biden administration is releasing what it calls a new strategy to fight domestic terrorism. Following a 100-day review, federal officials are now laying out a new plan hoping to deter, detect, and prosecute domestic terror. But the White House did not make a decision on one big policy question, whether to pass any new laws with specific criminal penalties for domestic terrorism. NBC News national security correspondent Ken Delanian joins us now. So, Ken, your story just published on NBCNews.com. Walk us through what is in this new strategy and perhaps more notably, what's not included in it.
Good morning, Joe. 5 months after the worst incident of domestic terrorism, perhaps in American history, the Biden administration is calling for a strategy that would allocate more resources to the problem of domestic terrorism, would prioritize it more highly at the FBI and other agencies, and would put more eyeballs, Joe, on what Americans are saying on social media. And that part of it is fairly controversial. And in fact, we had a moderate Republican from the Bush administration, Stuart Baker, quoted in our story saying, look, this makes me deeply uneasy because this is about directing the tools of counterterrorism to far right-wing extremists. Some of them are dangerous, but they are not al-Qaeda. And what the White House responded to that by saying that, look, we are laser focused on violence in this strategy. This is not about speech. But what the strategy does not include, Joe, as you said, is any call for new legislation to create criminal penalties for the crime of domestic terrorism, which is not in the law right now, and some people think is called for. Basically, they punted on that, and they're going to have the Justice Department analyze whether that is required over the coming months, Joe.
Ken, speaking of legislation, could this be laying the groundwork for any new legislation that would focus on surveillance of potential domestic terrorists?
It very well could. First, they're going to have to resolve this question of whether they should criminalize domestic terrorism and support for domestic terrorism. Joe, as you know, federal prosecutors have put many people in prison for the crime of material support to terrorism, people who have given money to al-Qaeda and ISIS. There is no similar domestic statute for people because there are no designated domestic terrorism groups under the First Amendment to the Constitution. That becomes very difficult. These are issues that the government needs to work through, whether there's anything that needs to be done in that direction, whether people who supported a conspiracy, for example, to assault the Capitol on January 6th are guilty of a crime of terrorism and should face special penalties. That doesn't exist in the law right now, and that's the debate going forward, whether it should exist, Joe.
Ken, while we have you, let's get an update on the subpoena scandal that's been rocking the Justice Department for the last few days. A top-level official is going to step down following this news that broke that the Trump Justice Department seized data from reporters and at least 2 members of Congress. What more should we know about this resignation? What does it tell us?
John Demers was the head of the National Security Division in the Trump administration, so he would have been briefed on these subpoenas, even if he wasn't in the decision chain. We just don't know. What's interesting about this is that he was probably going to leave anyway, but the timing of this announcement was very suspicious and shows that there is some internal turmoil about these decisions to go after these records from members of Congress and journalists. The Biden administration doesn't like it. There may be some accountability even for some of the career Justice Department officials who participated in those decisions, Joe.
All right, Ken Delaney. And Ken, thanks so much.
New this morning, the UK is extending its current lockdown restrictions for another 4 weeks. The delay gives the country a chance to administer more COVID vaccines, especially the second doses needed to combat the deadly Delta variant. Here in the U.S., health experts are warning the Delta variant will likely become the dominant strain. This comes as we pass a painful milestone: 600,000 American lives lost to COVID. But there are hopeful signs this morning. California, once an epicenter for the virus, is lifting most COVID restrictions today. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer is in Los Angeles with the latest. Hi, Miguel. Good morning.
Savannah, good morning. It's official here in California. Just hours ago, the state lifted nearly every restriction in this state, but it comes amid those new concerns over the Delta variant.
This morning, as health experts warn the Delta variant will likely become the most dominant strain in the U.S., new data from the UK suggests COVID vaccines help block the mutation from leading to severe outcomes.
You guys are all doing your second Pfizer?
Yes. Researchers finding Pfizer's vaccine is 96% effective in preventing hospitalization for the fully vaccinated and 92% for AstraZeneca. The study reinforcing the push to inoculate more people.
If you're not vaccinated, you are more likely to get sick, more likely to need to go to the hospital, and probably more likely to die.
This as the first state in the country to impose a COVID lockdown has officially removed restrictions. Overnight, California dropping capacity limits and physical distancing requirements for businesses, meaning bars, restaurants, theme parks, and stadiums are allowed to fully reopen at max capacity.
It's great, especially since we've been separated, to finally come back together.
But rules on masking are less clear. While the unvaccinated are still required to wear masks indoors, the fully inoculated can go maskless in most places, likely even at work as soon as this week. Still, companies are allowed to set their own rules.
Businesses can require verification. Businesses have the freedom of choice across the spectrum.
A similar rollback may soon come in New York, where 70% of adults are at least partially vaccinated, one of 14 states crossing that threshold, including Vermont, the first state to administer at least one dose to 80% of its eligible population.
Effective immediately, I'm lifting all remaining state pandemic restrictions and state of emergency.
As the nation reopens, a reminder of what we've lost. Lawmakers gathering at the Capitol to observe a moment of silence for the over 600,000 lives cut short by COVID.
Here in California, employers will be able to ask their employees to prove their vaccination status. Meantime, at businesses, of course, they are working on the honor system. Savannah, back to you.
A debate I'm sure we will continue to see play out. Miguel, thank you so much.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now. Dr. Patel, let's talk more about this Delta variant. First of all, researchers with the Zoe COVID symptom study, that's a nonprofit tracking the coronavirus, tell the BBC that the Delta variant is producing a different set of symptoms: headaches, sore throat, runny nose. What does this tell us about the mutation and those who get it?
Yeah, Joe, good morning. It tells us that the virus does what it's supposed to do. It's mutating. And as it mutates, we see it leading to more hospitalizations and potentially more symptoms. Remember in the beginning of this, when we were still trying to figure out, what do rashes on feet mean and what does it mean to lose your sense of smell or taste? Well, this is similar. We're seeing it still affecting the kind of respiratory, ear, nose, and throat area, but with somewhat slightly different symptoms initially. All of it leading, though, to concerning hospitalization rates, even amongst young people.
And doctor, let's talk about that positive news. As Miguel just mentioned, UK researchers found 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, 96% effective against the Delta variant, 2 doses of AstraZeneca overseas, 92% effective. How important is this when it comes to controlling the spread? Does it give you some relief as we look and maybe worry about the spread of these variants?
Yeah, Joe, it does. And we have had kind of early proof that these vaccines, the 3 available in the United States and many worldwide, including AstraZeneca, are effective against all the current variants. What concerns me is getting the vaccines, right? Miguel covered eloquently kind of how we're still struggling in the United States and many parts of the country. The majority of the world, let me just say this, the majority of the world is still not vaccinated. That offers a ripe opportunity for variants which might not get that level of effectiveness kind of in combat from vaccines. So we just need to get people vaccinated.
An important reminder. Dr. Kavita Patel, as always, thank you so much. Let's get a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Which means it's time for Bill Cairns to join us. Hi, Bill. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Unfortunately, we're talking about the tropics, and they're heating up already. Tropical Storm Bill. I knew this is always a weak storm. No one pays attention to it. Occasionally it's entertaining. This is Tropical Storm Bill on the right side of your screen, just off the east coast of the United States. The showers and thunderstorms yesterday that went through D.C. and Philadelphia were not associated with the tropical storm. That was with a cold front that is moving through the region. So Tropical Storm Bill is going to be a short-lived storm. Remember, Anna already happened, so we're already through the second letter of the alphabet, and we may even have the third letter, the Claudette, over the next couple days. More on that in a second. But right now, it's about 335 miles east-northeast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Max winds are at 50 miles per hour, and it's heading in the general directions of right around St. John's. So we may actually get a landfall of this weak system. If it's still a tropical storm by then, it may just be a regular old low area of low pressure. So not a big deal. But something we do need to watch, and this one could affect our friends in Louisiana a lot this upcoming weekend. We have a 70% chance of this system in the southern Gulf of Mexico near the Bay of Campeche that could develop and drift northwards over the next couple days. So this could be a tropical storm possibly heading up somewhere between Houston and New Orleans by the time we get to Friday, and it may linger Saturday or Sunday. Anyone that lives in this portion of the country knows how wet it's been. The ground is still super saturated. A slow-moving tropical system could possibly bring some really dangerous flooding. And our computers hint this could even last through Sunday or Monday. So keep an eye on this and all your plans, especially anywhere from Houston, especially New Orleans, to the Mobile area. Our computers are hinting at least 5 inches of rain. When you get a tropical system like that, maybe even more. And oh yeah, we still have a heat wave to talk about, an epic heat wave. We'll talk more about this next hour. 118 today in Phoenix. I don't know if I'm more impressed with that or the 105 in Billings, Montana.
Yeah.
Both are ridiculous.
Yeah, no kidding. They're not used to that up there. All right. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. See you soon.
Coming up, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is facing strong backlash for his opposition to a sweeping voting rights bill.
Yeah, hundreds of protesters descended on his home state. We'll tell you what happened next.
Protesters marched through West Virginia's capital yesterday, expressing their frustration with Senator Joe Manchin. The Poor People's Campaign held what it called a moral march on Manchin. They're protesting his opposition to a bill that would drastically change U.S. voting laws. NBC News correspondent Ali Vitale was there and brings us the latest.
Hey guys, good morning. When we talk about grassroots pressure campaigns against senators like Joe Manchin, this is what we're talking about. The Poor People's Campaign organizing a march here in West Virginia, marching to Senator Manchin's front door here, the office that he has in Charleston, and taping a letter to the door, or at least bringing it as far as they could get it, with the message that these policy agenda items that they would like him to push forward, things like the For the People Act and abolishing the filibuster, they see them not just as policy issues, but as moral ones. Take a listen to some of the letter that's in here. It reads in part, "We know that you have the ability to do tremendous good, not only for people in West Virginia, but also for the entire country. As a public servant who professes a faith guided by love, justice, and mercy, and who has sworn a public oath to support and defend the Constitution, your public statements about the filibuster are a moral contradiction. The filibuster, as it is currently being used, is not just bad policy, it is sinful." And Democrats that I've spoken to here on the ground make clear that just because West Virginia is a ruby red state, and it is, that's not to say that there aren't Democrats here who want to see policy progress. Take a listen.
All the roads are falling apart here, and we need to get some things done. We need people to see that the Democrats are the ones that help them, and we need to make sure that our votes can't get stolen.
Do you think that Joe Manchin and the positions that he's taking right now are representative of all West Virginians?
I think they're representative of almost no West Virginians.
And guys, if you talk to Democratic operatives, they'll point you to polling that shows that just because Democrats here in the state are the ones pushing for progress on these issues, it's not just one ideology, it's not just one party. There's one poll in particular that they'll point you to from a pollster who has been a longtime pollster for Biden, as well as other Democratic groups that they commissioned, that shows, yes, this polls well among Democrats here in a state like West Virginia, but policy plans like the American Families Plan that Biden is pushing, as well as the infrastructure plan, and even that voting rights bill that we often talk about, those things poll well here among Democrats, Republicans, and independents in West Virginia. So voters certainly partaking in this march to try to show that there is grassroots support for this, as Manchin says that he's trying to represent the desires of his constituents. But I would also remind you here, and I was talking with someone who used to work with Manchin, who said that this is a man who is known here in his home state as someone who is a maverick, who doesn't always march in lockstep with Democrats, but at the same time who has been clear and consistent in his position when it comes to his position on the filibuster, as well as his newly announced position on the For the People Act in that op-ed, that he's not supporting it and that he doesn't want to get rid of the filibuster, that bipartisan action is still the name of the game for him. It helps, this person reminded me, that Democrats now are coming back to him, asking what changes they can make to get him on board. Remember, he's not the only one, but this is a pressure campaign that is being mounted here on the ground in West Virginia, and also it's going to be coming to Washington next week. This group, the Poor People's Campaign, taking voters, busing them from West Virginia and neighboring Kentucky. Next week, they're hoping to pressure Manchin and McConnell at their offices in D.C. Guys?
Allie, thank you so much. Let's take a look at what's making news around the world this morning.
NBC News correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us today from Rome. Good morning, Claudio.
Morning, Savannah. Good morning, Joe. Well, after his record 12-year run as Israel's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't appear to want to go without a fight by calling the new coalition government a fraud. In the meantime, the new government of Israel has faced its first real test. by approving a controversial march organized by far-right groups that risks of inflaming tension with Palestinians. And in Belarus, an opposition activist and blogger who was arrested last month after the passenger plane was traveling on was forced to make a landing in the capital Minsk was appeared to have paraded by authorities at a news conference in the capital of Belarus. Now, Roman Petrovich told journalists that he was not being mistreated, that he was not being beaten, that he was fine, but he sat right next to military officers and he indeed looked like he was under duress. And also, last but not least, here in Italy, in the city of Verona, a beautiful ancient Roman building with spectacularly preserved frescoed walls was found by builders excavating at a cinema under renovation. Now, archaeologists call that a miniature Pompeii because that building too, they said, was abandoned in the 2nd century after a fire caused it to be abandoned. Guys.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, awesome discovery.
Yeah, I love it. We love when you bring us news from Italy, Claudio. Thank you. Good to see you. Coming up, South Bend, Indiana is fighting pollution in a new way.
Yeah, they're using artificial intelligence to keep their water clean. We'll take you underground to look at the city's smart sewers next. President Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden wish the country a happy Pride Month in a video message on Twitter.
Pride Month represents so very much.
It stands for defiance in the face of injustice, the legacy of Stonewall, and the fight to ensure that all people be treated with dignity and respect.
We're making progress in executive orders and federal laws and representation and in hearts and minds. This administration, our administration, is always going to have your back. And we're going to fight to pass the Equality Act and build a better LGBTQ life for young people.
The president said in the tweet that he's proud to stand with the LGBTQ community this month and every month. Now, as part of Pride, this Thursday night, I'm going to be hosting a 1-hour special, Trans America, focusing on issues impacting the transgender community. It will air on NBC News Now at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yay! And that's the first time we're announcing this here, right?
Yeah, on our show, yeah. And we'll do a lot more previews coming up in the next few days. But we've had some fascinating conversations with teenagers, parents, experts all around the country. So we're excited to bring that to you.
Absolutely. I know you've been working hard on it. I can't wait to see it. Thank you, Joe. For decades, South Bend, Indiana had a problem when it rained. The sewers would overflow, flushing wastewater into the St. Joseph River, the city's economic lifeline. They couldn't afford a new water treatment plant, so they had to get creative by using artificial intelligence and sensors to create a smart sewer system. As part of NBC's America the Vulnerable series on infrastructure solutions, Josh Letterman is here to tell us how this works. Josh, good morning. This is fascinating, and I know you got to look at what this actual smart sewer system looks like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, all this week we are looking at America's infrastructure problems and solutions. And down in South Bend, they faced a challenge that so many communities across the country are facing as they deal with crumbling infrastructure and looming environmental crises. How to solve a problem for tomorrow's generation without bankrupting today's. For a century, the St. Joseph River was South Bend's economic backbone, but it was also the sewer. Stormwater and sewage flowed through the same pipes into the river, then on to Lake Michigan.
The solution to pollution was dilution back then.
In the 1950s, the city built this treatment plant, but when it rained, it wasn't enough. Before the smart sewer, rainwater mixed with raw sewage would regularly overflow straight out of pipes like these, sending as many as 2 billion gallons a year of polluted water right into the river. The EPA said no more. But building new treatment plants would have cost $1 billion, practically bankrupting this working class town of just 100,000. The solution? Should we open it up?
Yes.
All right. Artificial intelligence, 15 feet below ground.
So this box here is what is called a remote
terminal unit. When rain fills the sewer, these wireless sensors detect which pipes are full.
This sensor is able to detect the increased pressure and is able to transmit a signal.
Then play traffic cop, opening and closing valves to direct sewage to other pipes where there's still room, rather than the river. South Bend has 150 of these smart sensors that hang down into the sewer, detecting the water levels across the city every 5 minutes. Launched in 2012, the smart sewer has cut river overflows more than 70%, while saving more than $400 million. E. coli has been cut by more than half. Now other cities are adopting their own smart sewers. And South Bend's residents have flushed an environmental problem down the drain.
The amount of boaters, the amount of people that are swimming in this river all the time now, I think that's a result of the improved water qualities, that human beings are using the river more now than ever.
These wastewater problems are only going to be growing in the coming years. More than half of America's sewers are now more than 60 years old, and the EPA says getting them up to speed over the next 2 decades could cost $500 billion. Savannah?
All right, Josh, so interesting the way that they're able to open those other pipes up remotely. Very cool. Great look at that. Thank you so much.
Coming up, have you been waiting to take that big trip that you put off because of the pandemic? Of course you have.
Well, you should start booking it soon. Your travel points might actually be disappearing before you know it. What you need to know up next. Conservative dark money groups are now pushing the critical race theory debate on a local level, a hyper-local level. This comes as at least 4 states have passed legislation banning lessons about race in the classroom, and the number of states considering the ban continues to rise. An NBC News analysis found at least 165 local and national groups are fueling this discussion among parents and teachers. Recent polling from the Heritage Foundation shows nearly 40% of parents don't know what critical race theory is. Another 25% say they are unsure. NBC News senior reporter Ben Collins joins us now with his reporting on this. Ben, good morning. So your article that just came out this morning, I believe, was fascinating, and it takes a closer look at this movement. So first, explain what you mean by these dark money groups for somebody who just is sort of, spooked by that term. And then also walk us through what's actually happening on these school boards. I mean, I know we've seen meetings swarmed by activists, and in some cases, these groups are aiming to take out the whole board. What's happening?
Yeah, so the dark money groups are, coalitions of people backed by what they say are pro bono lawyers, sometimes people funding these initiatives on the local level. So, you might be wondering why this has taken over your town. In a lot of cases, it's from the top down. It's from the national political level down to your town. That's what happened. We covered this happening in Maine, in Cumberland, Maine, where there was a man who's had a year-long fight with their local school district, where he was having this thing called Freedom of Information Act requests filed, over 54 of them filed against the school district, which allows them to go through their emails and, pull out everything they've ever done in that thing. That cost thousands of dollars. That was funded by a national group called No Left Turn in Education. That's not the only one. As you said, there are hundreds of these groups, and there are more school board recalls in the last 6 months, in the first 6 months of this year, than in any other year that it's been tracked.
Now, I know you spoke to a school board member about banning critical race theory. What did you learn?
Well, it's sort of nebulous. If you don't know what critical race theory is, and apparently most Americans don't, it's kind of because that's on purpose. Nobody can really seem to define what it is because it means something different to everyone. Steve Bannon, who used to be very close to Donald Trump, our former president, said that the route to political power now is through the school boards. It's on its way up. This is a political fight that is happening, national political fight that is happening on the local level, because they think that's how they can win power back, is to go through sort of like the Tea Party did 10 years ago, is to fight through these local battles, make them extremely viral, and then push them up the chain to places like Fox News.
And now, Ben, I mean, you just mentioned this. You quote Steve Bannon saying that. I mean, help put this in context, though, because it's essentially these tactics that we normally see at the national political level that are playing out in these hyper-local elections. And, of course, you have to keep in mind, I mean, really, these have children and their education at the center of them. What kind of implications does this have on other elections?
It can be extremely disruptive. And by the way, like you said, the children are not part of this fight, really, in any capacity. It's local educators, local superintendents, school board administrators, local parents, largely fighting with a much smaller group of people. This was when we were talking about this case in Cumberland, Maine, this was a year-long dogfight over what one small group of parents believed to be the indoctrination of children. It involved a billboard that was booby-trapped of the face of one of the school board administrators. It was a really big, horrific fight for a year. And last week, by the way, it involved Tucker Carlson. It went all the way up to Tucker Carlson through that group, No Left Turn Education. And last week, that school board member sort of cruised to re-election. This is a small minoritarian fight against a much larger reckoning with race in this country.
Yeah, the rat trap detail around the billboard really got me in your article this morning. Ben, thank you very much. Always good to see you.
During the pandemic, many of us were forced to put our vacation plans on hold. Now, with summer upon us, Americans' desire for travel is picking up. We have two reports this morning, beginning with how you can cash in on those unused points and vouchers. NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Ruhle explains.
Hey there, Joe and Savannah. This weekend, almost 4 million people went through TSA checkpoints. That is the most we have seen since before the pandemic. We have all been talking about it. Travel demand is up. So if you're planning a vacation, now may be the time to finally use those miles, rewards, points that you've been stocking up for so long. This could be the time to use them. Many Americans are planning trips they put on hold during the thick of the pandemic, knowing they'd be able to use those tickets and bookings in the future. But experts say the future may be now.
Make sure that you're aware of those expiration dates and make sure you're aware of how much money you have to spend so you can budget your trip accordingly.
The rules vary. For example, with American Airlines credit cards, miles expire 18 months from your most recent card use. For United tickets canceled during the pandemic, you have until March of 2022 to travel. So read the fine print on your vouchers and keep in mind that if you book through a third party, you may have to rebook the same way. When it comes to banking rewards points, travel credit card holders have an average of almost $650 in points saved up. Should we have a use it or lose it mentality?
You don't want to wait forever because points can devalue over time, and some loyalty programs have expiration dates for your points, which means that if you wait too long, they're gone.
If you are vacationing this summer, international flights will get you the biggest discounts because they're the most expensive. But double check the travel restrictions before booking. Set reminders to use credits before they expire. And if you don't have travel plans, consider cashing in your rewards for essentials like groceries or cash back. So guys, seriously, take the time now. Open up all your frequent flyer accounts, your credit card apps, figure out exactly what you have, and get serious because if you don't use them, there's a really good chance you'll lose them. Joe, Savannah?
All right, Steph Ruhle, thanks for that. But not everybody needs a plane or hotel room because millions of Americans are planning to hit the road this summer and spend time in the great outdoors traveling by RV. NBC News investigative and consumer correspondent Vicki Nguyen has some tips if you plan to rent one for your vacation.
Good morning. Whether you're buying or renting, RVs are hard to find. The RV Industry Association says sales inventory is at a historic low, and the number of Americans who want to hit the open road is record-breaking. So how do you get in on the fun? From finding an RV to landing the perfect campsite, I have some insider tips to help you make some new memories this summer. And even if you are not an outdoorsy person, I'm telling you, after the story, you might want to try it out.
Soaking in nature, forging new family memories, the pandemic's silver lining, giving millions of Americans time to drive into the great outdoors. 56 million people plan on taking an RV vacation this summer. That's more than double the typical summer average of 25 million.
RVs are being bought as soon as they're hitting the lots.
New projections show shipments of at least 576,000 new RVs by the end of 2021, a nearly 34% increase over 2020. And in a recent poll of new owners, surprisingly, RVers didn't hit the road because of the pandemic.
It's discovering, getting into the great outdoors. It's using an RV as a base camp for other types of outdoor recreation. And of course, spending time with friends and family.
With high demand in the rental market as well, how do you start an RV vacation?
I'm here at Camp Taylor Campground in Western New Jersey, and we found an RV and a campsite thanks to Janine Pettit, founder of Girl Camper. Hi, how are you?
Vicki, thank you for coming to the beautiful Garden State.
Yes, so tell us, how can Girl Camper help people start and plan their RV vacation this summer?
We help you find all the resources on how to get the trailer that's right for you, how to find the campground that's right for you. We just provide all of that for you so you can get a step into this lifestyle.
It starts with finding an RV, which we did with Janine's help, and I was in for a real surprise.
Oh my gosh, this is my style of camping. This is amazing.
This is glamping. This is what we do.
I love it. You got the fire, an outdoor rug. This is so fancy.
Let me show you the inside.
This looks amazing.
Isn't this beautiful?
Yes, it's so luxurious in here.
A kitchen, a convection microwave, a double stainless steel sink. We've got sleeping for two up here.
I see that.
The dinette folds down and becomes two more, and there's a big queen size bed and full bath in the back.
So this is nicer than some New York City apartments, I have to say.
To rent an RV, Janine says try Outdoorsy, an Airbnb for RVs. Another option, RV Share, which allows you to rent directly from RV owners across the U.S. Don't forget the large rental companies like Cruise America and El Monte. When it comes to cost, RVs start at $55 per day for a small towable camper that sleeps four. And they can go all the way up to $1,500 a day for one of these Rockstar buses that can sleep 8.
How do you score an amazing campsite like this?
With perseverance, Vicki. Keep calling that campground because people cancel. Life happens. There's lots of cancellations at the last minute. The other thing is, once your feet are wet and you become a little more savvy, then you're going to book this thing 6 months in advance.
Other options, Harvest Host allows you to camp at a winery, brewery, or even a private farm for $99 a year. No camping fees, but you can only stay one night at a time. And hipcamp.com will direct you to campsites on everything from public parks to private farms, starting at $20 a day.
And one final thing to consider, do you want to tow a travel trailer like this? The upside is once you get to your campsite, you still have a car that you can get out, be mobile, and go sightseeing with. In a mobile home, you might not be as mobile once you're hooked up to the campsite and you don't have a little car to tow around. The upside is, once you get out on the open road, you can take the whole crew with you. What do you think it is about nature and the great outdoors that's welcoming so many people back out?
I think it's so healing, and it's been a stressful year for a lot of people. We have no Wi-Fi here. We're not able to stream anything. We're not downloading email. It forces you into a situation in which you just need to chill out.
Cheers to camping.
Here's some extra tips for you. If you're planning on going to a national park this summer, prepare for some long lines. Try to make a reservation whenever possible. The National Park Service has a great website to help you plan like a ranger. Also, before you hit the road, make sure you buy your own surge protector that plugs in between the RV and the campsite. And don't forget that all-important bug spray. You want to keep those critters off so everyone has a blast. Back to you.
I want to do a marshmallow cheer.
I know, right? Bug spray is a good tip, too.
That too. Coming up, the country is seeing massive numbers of job openings, and many businesses can't find enough people to hire.
Why teens looking for summer jobs might be more valuable than ever, up next.
Time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
And today we have CNBC's Bertha Coombs joining us. Hi, Bertha. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joan, Savannah. You know, the CEO of American Express thinks we are back. He says spending on dining and travel is nearing a full recovery. He tells CNBC's Jim Cramer that travel bookings have nearly reached their 2019 levels, and dining expenses last month were about 85% of what they were before the pandemic. He says delinquencies on Amex cards, that's payments that are 30 days late or more, they're at the lowest level in years, and personal savings have actually doubled. Meantime, Amazon is opening its first full-size grocery store in Washington state on Thursday. The new Amazon Fresh store will feature the company's Just Walk Out technology, where you don't have to go through the checkout line to pay for items. I will tell you, I've done it here in New York City, and it's just a little bit of a weird experience. Officially, efficient, but a little strange. It's also going to have Alexa kiosks, and customers can pick up and return Amazon packages at the store. It'll also allow people to use the Amazon One tool to just scan their palm or insert a credit or debit card linked to their Amazon account to gain entry. Meantime, YouTube is banning political and gambling ads from the masthead space of the top of the homepage. Ads for prescription drugs and alcohol are also no longer allowed. Ads related to political issues may still appear, but YouTube will review them on a case-by-case basis. As one of the world's most visited sites, YouTube says the masthead is prime real estate for advertisers. It's a big step for them to take because it could be a hit to their bottom line.
Yeah, it absolutely is, especially.
Yeah, I was going to say, but somebody tells me they'll make up for it somewhere else.
Yeah, really. But it's a big debate. All right, Bertha, thank you so much. Retail stores, restaurants, and amusement parks are reopening, but they're all facing worker shortages this summer. So could teens help fill the job gap? NBC News Now correspondent Isa Gutierrez looks at how the youngest members of our workforce could be more important than ever this year.
It's that time of year when school is wrapping up and summer activities are about to begin. For many teens this year, that includes a summer job.
There is a lot of opportunities for teens to have jobs.
All my friends actually have been able to find jobs. I don't know one of my friends that isn't working this summer, so that's really excellent.
We expect to see over 2 million teens find work this summer.
On one hand, the economy is reopening in a big way, with retail, restaurants, amusement parks, and other industries needing extra hands. On the other, teen disengagement has been high during the pandemic, so getting teens to work this summer addresses both problems.
A lot of the areas of the economy that traditionally hire teens are coming back through the next couple of months.
Andy Challenger is a senior vice president at Challenger Gray & Christmas. It's a firm that analyzes data to outline what the teen job market is going to look like each summer.
We saw a lot of areas of the economy that teens typically find work basically shut down throughout 2020, a year and some change due to COVID. A lot of in-person, lower skill work, great for entry-level workers.
From coast to coast, summer youth employment programs saw this firsthand last year.
Last year, quite honestly, we weren't even sure if we were going to have a program at all.
Last year was really tough. It was fully virtual.
Maritza and Daniel work with employment programs in LA County, California, and Brooklyn, New York.
For this year, I think people feel that there's a sense of normalcy returning. So I'm getting a lot of phone calls from youth.
Daniel's program will connect nearly 500 14 to 21-year-olds with jobs this summer. That's about double compared to last year.
The employers, on their side, the interest has gone up because they're asking for more kids.
You can definitely see that people are really starting to be more, willing to take in interns or, just workers in general to, work for them now that things are starting to open up more.
I wanted to work this summer to not be bored at home like I was last year.
It's a very lonely experience, just sitting behind a Zoom screen or a Slack message board. So seeing real people, whether they're a customer or, you're meeting with your boss, just to get that human interaction and reactions that aren't emojis are always great.
I've heard parents say, listen, we're struggling right now with bills. Could you help out? And these kids are stepping up to the plate.
I think the old myth used to be that, kids got a job so that they can get the latest Air Jordans and, CDs or whatnot. But a lot of it is really no. People are helping their families.
The fire issue to get a job is really burning. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of students, a lot of teenagers going to the work field and trying to look for jobs and just having to step it up due to the pandemic.
Some teens are working multiple jobs to meet their goals.
My name is Lindsay, and this summer I will be working at a retail clothing store, and I also might be working at a summer camp.
This summer I will be working for my summer camp, working at a local grocery store, and working on a local campaign.
According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the number of teenagers working is already above pre-pandemic levels. There were more 16 to 19-year-olds employed this May than in any month since 2008.
Are there more opportunities than, say, in 2019? Yeah. There's more unfilled roles in areas where teenagers can find jobs today than there has been over the last 5 years. But that's because so many of these jobs are just coming back online, and they don't have people in them for the first time in a long time.
Whether we can match teens with jobs and if teenagers will step up to fill all of those roles is yet to be seen.
Whether that's going to translate to a much higher number of teenagers finding jobs, don't know yet. We think it's going to be a high number because there is this window of opportunity.
I can only imagine how eager teens are to go work after the last year.
I know, really. And I mean, just think about finding those first jobs, over the summer and that type of thing. There's a lot of options.
Did you have a summer job?
I did, at a pizza shop.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
I worked year round, but
yeah, actually, I guess I did stay at the pizza shop through the fall and everything.
But summer started it, so there you go.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. And a camp counselor for one.
That's a summer job.
Yeah,
That's a good one. That's a good one. I umpired softball one summer.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, the camp counselor was a little much also for me.
That's why there's summer jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.